No one in the opulent lobby expected the hotel magnate's very public firing of a maid to be recorded. But as the video went viral, Arthur Vance would make a far more private discovery. The young woman he'd just humiliated, face blurred by tears and a uniform cap, was the daughter he had abandoned 22 years ago. Her minimum wage job was in the very empire he built, and she had no idea the man destroying her dignity was her father. Arthur Vance built the Avalon Hotels Group from a single bankrupt motel into a billion-dollar symbol of cold luxury. He was famous for his ruthless standards and his utter lack of past. But one viral video was about to connect his pristine present to a desperately hidden history, forcing a single question: how does a man who controls everything confront the one life he threw away? This is the story of a public humiliation that became a private reckoning, and the daughter who worked in the shadows of her own father's empire. To understand the cruelty in that lobby, you have to understand Arthur Vance's first rule: sentiment is a currency for the weak. He crafted this philosophy in the ruins of his own beginnings. 28 years ago, Arthur was a 22-year-old bartender named Artie, working nights at a dockside pub. He shared a one-room apartment with his girlfriend, Chloe, a nursing student. Their life was a tightrope of overdue bills and shifting dreams. Then Chloe got pregnant. Arthur's reaction wasn't fear. It was a cold, clear calculation. He saw the baby as an anchor that would sink the ambitious future he was already picturing. He gave Chloe an ultimatum. Him and his potential, or the child. He never imagined she'd choose the child. When she did, Arthur left. He took his bartending tips and a single suitcase. He changed his name from Artie to Arthur, legally severing that old identity like a dead branch. He moved across the country and told everyone he was an orphan, a self-made man with no history to weigh him down. It was the ultimate strategic rebrand. Sentiment, he decided, was the one luxury he could not afford. He poured that icy focus into business. He bought a failing motel on a highway off-ramp, working 18-hour days, cleaning rooms himself, undercutting competitors by any means necessary. He fired employees for a single complaint. He sued small contractors over minor defects. He built a reputation not for quality, but for ruthless efficiency. Within a decade, the single motel became the Avalon Hotels Group, a chain known for sterile perfection and aggressive expansion. Arthur Vance was a billionaire, a fixture on magazine covers, a man who had successfully buried his past, or so he believed. But history has a way of echoing. While Arthur was building his empire, Chloe was raising their daughter, Lily, in that same city he fled. It was a life of quiet struggle. Chloe worked double shifts as a nurse, often leaving Lily with a kind but elderly neighbor. Money was always tight. Lily grew up knowing her father had left because he didn't want her. That fact wasn't a drama, it was a simple, aching stone in her pocket, a weight she carried every day. After Chloe passed away from a sudden illness when Lily was 19, the already fragile world collapsed. Lily was left with medical debt, a mountain of grief, and no safety net. She dropped out of community college. She took whatever work she could find: retail, diner shifts, office cleaning. She was a ghost in the service economy, invisible by design. A year later, desperately needing better pay and health benefits, she applied for a housekeeping position at the flagship Avalon Grand. The hiring manager never looked past her resume. She got the job. So for 2 years, Lily Vance cleaned the rooms her father owned. She vacuumed carpets that cost more than her monthly rent. She polished mirrors that reflected a luxury she could never access. She was a model employee, quiet, thorough, reliable. She kept her head down. She needed the job. The incident in the lobby happened on a Tuesday morning. The Avalon Grand was hosting an international investor summit. Arthur Vance was conducting a last-minute walkthrough, a theatrical display of his exacting standards for the visiting press corps. His entourage of executives and publicists trailed behind him, hanging on his every critique. Lily was finishing her morning shift, pushing her heavy cart laden with cleaning supplies and linens toward the service elevator. A strap on her cart snapped. A bottle of glass cleaner tipped over, spilling onto the pristine marble floor not far from where Arthur was holding court. It was a minor accident, instantly rectifiable, but Arthur saw it as a stain on his perfect narrative. He turned from the investors, his face a mask of cold fury. He didn't yell. His voice dropped to a blade-like whisper that carried in the hushed lobby. "Is this the standard we now employ?" he said, his eyes not on the spill, but on Lily frozen in humiliation. "Carelessness is a contagion. It starts with a bottle and infects an entire brand." He turned to the trembling hotel manager. "This employee is terminated, effective immediately. Escort her out, and send the bill for cleaning this floor to her final paycheck." A guest discreetly filmed the entire exchange on their phone. Lily, tears of shock and shame welling in her eyes, was led out through the staff entrance as Arthur turned back to his investors with a thin, satisfied smile. The video was posted online within the hour. By noon, it was trending. The caption read, "Billionaire Hotel Tycoon Fires Maid for Spilling Cleaner." Public reaction was swift and brutal. Hashtags like Boycott Avalon and Vance the Bully started trending. News outlets picked up the story. Comments flooded in, condemning his cruelty, highlighting the power imbalance. For Arthur, this was a public relations crisis, not a moral one. He was furious not at his own behavior but at the leak. He assembled his crisis team in the penthouse suite. His head of PR, a shrewd woman named Sophia, advised a swift, carefully worded apology. "We issue a statement," she said. "We express regret for the unfortunate tone of the interaction. We announce a review of management protocols. We turn the page." Arthur paced behind his desk, looking out over the city he dominated. "I don't apologize for demanding excellence," he snapped, but Sophia was insistent. The financial fallout was becoming tangible. Several influencer partnerships were paused. A planned bond offering was showing nervousness. "We need to humanize you, Arthur," Sophia pressed. "Perhaps we find the girl, offer her a settlement, a new job, we get a photo, we control the narrative." Grudgingly, Arthur agreed. "Fine, find her, make her an offer she can't refuse, but get a non-disclosure agreement, a comprehensive one." This task fell to Miles Carter, Arthur's relentless head of security and fixer. Miles was a man who believed every life was a file waiting to be opened. He got the terminated employee's name from HR, Lily Green. He began a standard background check, expecting to find a simple profile, a few addresses, employment history, maybe some debt. A straightforward transaction awaited. But the first search returned something odd. There was no birth certificate for a Lily Green matching her age and city of birth. There was, however, a sealed record for a Lily Marie Vance, born 22 years ago. The mother's name was Chloe Vance. The father's name on the certificate was listed as Arthur Vance, an alias Miles had never encountered. He cross-referenced the mother's details. Chloe Vance, formerly Chloe Pearson, deceased. He pulled an old, grainy photo from a nursing school database. The resemblance to the fired maid was unmistakable. They had the same eyes. Miles felt a familiar, cold prickle at the back of his neck. This was no longer a simple PR cleanup. He dug deeper, accessing archives no standard search would touch. He found the record of the name change from Artie to Arthur. He found the old apartment address. The timeline was perfect and damning. He compiled a slim digital dossier, just the facts, the birth certificate, the name change, the mother's obituary, a current photo of Lily from the hotel's employee badge. He brought it to Arthur, who was still fuming over the negative headlines. Arthur waved him in, distracted. "Did you find the girl? How much does she want?" Miles said nothing. He placed a tablet on Arthur's vast, empty desk and tapped the screen. The birth certificate filled the display. Arthur's eyes scanned it impatiently, then stopped. He saw his old name. He saw Chloe's name. He saw Father Arthur Vance. The blood drained from his face. The angry flush of moments before was replaced by a terrifying pallor. The noise of the city, the distant hum of his crisis team in the next room, all of it faded into a silent, roaring vacuum. He looked up at Miles, his voice a dry whisper, all his billionaire authority gone, replaced by pure, undiluted shock. "What is this?" Miles Carter didn't answer. He didn't have to. The evidence on the screen was its own brutal verdict. Arthur Vance, the man who built an empire on the myth of having no past, was staring at the daughter he had willfully forgotten. The silence in the penthouse suite stretched, thin and brittle. Arthur's fingers, usually so steady during billion-dollar negotiations, trembled as he scrolled through the digital file. Each document was a hammer blow to the foundation of his life. The official birth certificate, hospital records from a public ward he'd never seen, a copy of Chloe's death certificate from 3 years prior. Cause, congestive heart failure, complications from a lifelong struggle, with a rare autoimmune disease. Arthur had known none of it. She never tried to contact me, Arthur finally asked, his voice hollow. Not once, Miles confirmed, his tone devoid of judgment. All records indicate she believed you were deceased. Her mother's obituary listed Lily as the beloved daughter of the late Arthur Vance. Chloe told her you died in a car accident shortly after she was born. Arthur felt the words like a physical strike. Chloe had given him the cleanest exit possible. She had painted him as a tragedy, not a choice. She had shouldered the entire burden, and she had died with that lie intact. The weight of that sacrifice, the sheer magnitude of a kindness he had never deserved, collapsed onto him all at once. "Where is she now?" Arthur demanded, the businessman reasserting control, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. "Her last known address is a subsidized housing complex 40 minutes from here. She was evicted last week for non-payment. Her phone is disconnected. The hotel termination voided her health insurance, which was covering a medication for chronic migraines, a condition she inherited from her mother." Each fact was a fresh indictment. Arthur turned from the window, his mind racing through a storm of calculations, but none of them were financial. They were all moral, and he was bankrupt. "I need to see her. Now you will find her." "Arthur," Miles said, a rare note of caution in his voice. "Consider the optics. The video is still trending. If you approach her publicly and the press discovers the connection." "I don't care about the optics," Arthur roared, slamming a hand on the desk. The sharp crack echoed in the sterile room. He took a ragged breath, forcing the fury down where it curdled into a cold, sharp resolve. "Find her, do it quietly, and prepare an offer, not a settlement, a foundation for her, everything she needs. Housing, medical care, education, backdated to the day she was born." It was a start, a pathetic monetary start, but it was the only language he truly knew. Miles nodded and left the room. Arthur was alone with the ghost of the girl on the screen. He pulled up the viral video on his own device, watching it again with new eyes. Every flinch of her shoulders, every tear she fought back, was no longer the failings of a careless employee. They were the wounds of his own child. The shame was so profound it felt like drowning. While Arthur sat in his gilded cage, Lily was navigating a different kind of prison. She was in the back of a city bus, her few possessions in a duffel bag at her feet. The eviction notice was folded in her pocket. The $53 in her wallet was all that stood between her and the shelter system. The migraine brewing behind her eyes was a familiar, grinding agony. She had no pills left. She got off at a stop near the downtown library, a place she could use the computers to search for jobs and rest without being bothered. As she walked, head down, she passed a newsstand. Her own blurred face stared back from the front page of a tabloid next to the headline, "Avalon Tycoon's Heartless Crusade." She bought the paper with her last few coins, a morbid curiosity overriding survival instinct. Sitting at a library computer terminal, she read the article. It was full of righteous anger about workplace abuse, quotes from experts, and speculation about Arthur Vance's cold personality. It painted her as a helpless victim. She hated that. She wasn't helpless, she was exhausted. There's a difference. As she read the comments on the library's social media feed, a new thread caught her eye. A user with an anonymous handle posted, "Did some digging. The maid's name is Lily Green. Mother was Chloe Green, died 3 years ago. Father unknown. Interesting that Vance's first company was registered in the same city Chloe lived in. Coincidence?" A chill, unrelated to the library's air conditioning, snaked down Lily's spine. She spent a lifetime not asking about her father. Her mother's story was simple. He was a good man who died young. Lily had never pressed. Grief was a wall she didn't want to scale. But this random comment, this hint of a connection to Arthur Vance, ignited a dread she couldn't name. She pulled up a search engine and for the first time in her life, typed her mother's name followed by Arthur Vance. The results were sparse, but one was a scanned article from a local business journal from 25 years ago. It was a profile of a young entrepreneur named Artie Vance who was renovating a motel. The photo was grainy, but the man was young, with sharp, familiar features and an intense gaze. Her breath hitched. She zoomed in. The caption read, "Artie Vance, 24, bets his future on the Sunrise Motel." The article mentioned he was dating a nursing student named Chloe Pearson. Pearson, her mother's maiden name, Lily's hands began to shake. She cross-referenced dates. Her mother would have been 22. She typed Artie Vance name change. A public record appeared, a petition for a legal name change from Arthur Joseph Vance to Arthur J. Vance. The petition date was 9 months before her own birth. The pieces, jagged and terrible, began to lock together. The man who fired her wasn't just a cruel billionaire. He was Artie, the man who left her pregnant mother, the man who was supposed to be dead. The library computer's screen blurred as tears welled, fueled by a surge of pure, incandescent rage. He was alive, he was rich, and he had looked her in the eye and destroyed her without a flicker of recognition. The lie of her entire life shattered in that silent, public library. At that moment, a man in a dark overcoat slid into the chair next to her. He didn't look at the screen. He spoke softly, his voice calm. "Miss Green, my name is Miles Carter. I work for Arthur Vance. He would like to speak with you. He has explanations." Lily didn't jump. She slowly closed the browser, wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, and turned to face Miles. The rage was gone, replaced by an eerie, glacial calm. "Explanations," she repeated, her voice flat. "Okay, tell him I'll meet him, but not in his office. Somewhere public. The park across from the Avalon Grand. 1 hour." Miles nodded, slightly taken aback by her composure. He relayed the message via his earpiece. An hour later, Arthur stood by a park bench, uncharacteristically exposed. He dismissed his security detail to a perimeter. He saw Lily walking toward him, her posture straight, her face pale but set. She stopped a few feet away. "You knew," she said. "It wasn't a question." Arthur swallowed. "I didn't, not until today. Miles found the records after the video. I swear to you, Lily, I thought." "You thought what?" she interrupted, her voice like chipped ice. "That we just disappeared, that your conscience was clear." "I thought your mother had ended the pregnancy," he admitted, the words tasting like ash. "She said she would. I was a coward. I left and I buried it. I built a new person." Lily absorbed this, her expression unchanging. "My mother told me you died. She gave you a hero's exit. She worked 2 jobs until her body gave out. She died in medical debt, and I've spent 3 years cleaning it up. And you built hotels." "I can fix that," Arthur said, desperation seeping into his tone. "I can fix all of it. The debt, your home, your health. Let me help you." "Help me?" A bitter, humorless laugh escaped her. "You want to help me? You humiliated me in front of the world. You took the last stable thing I had. Your help is what got us here." She took a step closer, her eyes blazing. "I don't want your money. I want you to tell the truth, to the press, to everyone. I want you to stand in front of those cameras and admit who I am and what you did. Not just today, 22 years ago." Arthur froze. The business part of his brain screamed in alarm. The legal implications, the shareholder panic, the brand annihilation. It would be suicide. "Lily, we can handle this privately. We can arrange support, a trust, a new identity if you want. Going public will destroy your peace. The scrutiny will be unbearable." "My peace," she whispered, the cold finally breaking into something raw and pained. "You think I've known peace? Do it, Arthur. Tell the truth, or I will." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the shadow of his own hotel. He watched her go, a solitary figure being swallowed by the city. For the second time in his life, he was letting her walk away. But this time, he was watching. His phone buzzed. It was Sophia, his head of PR. "Arthur, we have a major problem. The National Chronicle has a source. They're preparing a story alleging that the fired employee is, quote, connected to you by more than just the incident. They're asking for comment. What do we do?" The bridge was burning behind him. The truth was no longer a choice between him and Lily. It was a race against the clock. Arthur looked in the direction Lily had gone, then back at the gleaming tower of the Avalon Grand. "Schedule a press conference," he said, his voice suddenly tired but clear. "For tomorrow morning, I'll be making a personal statement." "Arthur, what are you going to say?" Sophia asked, panic edging her voice. But Arthur had already ended the call. He had a long night ahead. He had to prepare a speech that would detonate his carefully constructed life. And he had to find Lily before the storm hit, because the vultures were already circling, and one in particular had just caught the scent. As Arthur's driver pulled up, Miles got in the passenger seat, holding another tablet. "We have another issue. While tracking Lily's movements, I intercepted a communication. A private investigator, a very discreet and expensive one, has also been digging into her background for the past 72 hours. He's not with the press." "Who hired him?" Arthur asked, a new kind of cold settling in his stomach. "The retainer traces back to a shell corporation," Miles said, his face grim. "But the pattern of inquiry is specific. They're not just looking for her current address. They're looking for her medical history, her psychological records, any history of instability. They're building a character assassination file." Arthur's blood ran cold. This wasn't about curiosity or journalism. This was a preemptive strike. Who would want to destroy her credibility before she even speaks? Miles met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Someone who knows the truth is coming out, and someone who wants to control the narrative by destroying the narrator. The PICE methods have a signature. I've seen it before. It's the work of Victor Hale. The name was a punch to the gut. Victor Hale, a former partner from the brutal early days of Avalon. A man who had tried to orchestrate a hostile takeover and had sworn revenge when Arthur bankrupted him in the ensuing war. A man with nothing left to lose and a bottomless capacity for spite. "He knows," Arthur breathed. "He suspects," Miles corrected. "But he'll know for sure after your press conference tomorrow. And if he gets to Lily first with his version of events, with twisted evidence of her being unstable or a gold digger." Arthur didn't let him finish. "Find her, now, I don't care what it takes. Get her to a secure location. The penthouse is too obvious. Use the safe house in the mountains and get a medical team there. She needs her medication." "She may not come willingly," Miles warned. "Then make her understand it's not about control," Arthur said, his voice cracking with an emotion he could no longer name. "It's about survival. Tell her the wolves are here, and they're not coming for me this time." Miles Carter found Lily in a 24-hour laundromat, clutching her duffel bag like a life preserver. The migraine had fully descended, painting jagged lines at the edge of her vision. When he explained the threat, the name, Victor Hale, meant nothing to her. But the fear in Miles's eyes, a man she'd only seen as unflappable, convinced her to get in the car. The safe house was a modern, secluded cabin 2 hours north of the city, all glass and steel nestled in pine trees. A private doctor was waiting. He administered medication for the migraine and ran basic tests, his expression growing gradually more serious. He took Miles aside. "Her blood pressure is dangerously elevated. This isn't just stress or migraines. She needs monitoring, proper rest, and a cardiology workup. Immediately." Lily, lying on a couch under a blanket, overheard. "I'm fine," she murmured, the fight gone out of her, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "It's always like this." "Not like this," the doctor said gently but firmly. Meanwhile, back in the city, Arthur Vance was in the war room of his penthouse, the night stretching before him. The speech for the press conference was a minefield. His lawyers wanted vagueness. His PR team wanted contrition. Arthur found himself wanting something he'd never sought before: truth. He dismissed everyone at 2 a.m., staring at a blank page. He didn't write a speech. He wrote a confession. As dawn broke, Victor Hale was not sleeping either. In a modest, untraceable office, he reviewed the private investigator's latest report. The medical history was promising: chronic conditions, a mother with a serious illness, financial desperation. The narrative wrote itself: an unstable, debt-ridden young woman, seeing a chance in a viral video to exploit a wealthy man. He placed a call to a friendly editor at the National Chronicle. "The story is bigger than workplace bullying," he whispered. "It's a long-con fraud. I'm sending you the documents now. Hold the front page." At 8 a.m., the lobby of the Avalon Grand was a chaos of cameras and shouting reporters. Arthur walked to the podium alone, no handlers in sight. He looked older, stripped of his usual armor. He didn't read from a paper. "3 days ago," he began, his voice clear but strained, "I publicly fired an employee for a minor mistake. My behavior was cruel and unjust. That woman's name is Lily Green." He paused, the weight of the next sentence hanging in the air. "But that is not her only name. Her legal name at birth was Lily Marie Vance." A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by a frenzy of flashing lights. Arthur continued, speaking over the rising din. I am her biological father. 22 years ago, I abandoned her mother, Chloe Pearson, when she chose to have our child. I changed my name, moved away, and built a life on the lie that I had no past. I did not know Lily existed until yesterday. She was raised believing I was dead. The woman I humiliated in this very lobby is my daughter. The room exploded. Reporters shouted over each other. Arthur held up a hand, and a strange, tense quiet fell. This is not a publicity stunt. It is the truth. My failure is not a momentary lapse in judgment. It is the foundation of my entire adult life. Effective immediately, I am stepping aside as CEO of Avalon Hotels Group, pending a full review by the board. All my personal resources are being directed to settling the debts incurred by Chloe Pearson and to ensuring Lily Vance has every opportunity, security, and privacy she deserves. He took a single, shaky breath, looking directly into the cameras. To Lily, if you are watching, I am so sorry, not just for the lobby, for every single day. He walked off the stage, ignoring the shouted questions, leaving a media earthquake in his wake. The story detonated across the globe. The narrative flipped from a billionaire bully to a Shakespearean tragedy of abandonment and ironic reunion. In the safe house, Lily watched the broadcast on a muted television. She saw the shock on his face, heard the raw tremor in his apology. She felt nothing at first, just a numb detachment. Then, a single hot tear tracked down her cheek. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the sheer, exhausting relief of no longer carrying the secret alone. But Victor Hale was watching too, and he was smiling. Arthur's confession had just made his plan even easier. He sent a second, urgent package to the Chronicle editor. It contained fabricated bank records showing small, older deposits from a shell company to Chloe Pearson's account, implying a long-standing, secret hush money arrangement now being exploited by the daughter. The headline was ready: Secret PAYMENTS revealed, abandoned daughter scheme years in the making. The story went live at noon. The twist was malicious genius. It reframed Arthur's confession as part of the scam, a forced admission to preempt a worse revelation. Public opinion, ever fickle, began to churn with doubt. Online forums buzzed with theories. Was the father a monster or the daughter a master manipulator? Miles intercepted the story the moment it published. He showed it to Arthur, who was in his car, heading north to the safe house. Arthur read it, and a terrifying calm settled over him. This wasn't just revenge. This was annihilation. Victor wasn't just attacking him, he was ensuring Lily would be destroyed in the crossfire, her character poisoned forever. We need to prove the documents are forgeries, Miles said. That takes time, Arthur replied, his voice like granite. We don't have time. He's creating a reality. We need to dismantle his. A new, darker idea formed. You said he's digging into her medical history. Why? To paint her as unstable. What if we look into his asterisk history? Not business, personal. What is he most afraid of people knowing? Miles understood. I'll turn over every stone he's been hiding under. Back at the cabin, the doctor's concern was growing. Lily's blood pressure was not improving. She complained of a worsening headache and blurred vision. We need to get her to a hospital, he told Miles over a secure line. This is becoming an emergency. But the moment they tried to move her, the external world crashed in. A rogue paparazzi drone, likely tipped by Victor's network, buzzed over the property, its camera lens glinting in the afternoon sun. They were compromised. Going to a public hospital now would be a circus, a feeding frenzy for the tabloids. Arthur arrived at that moment, his car kicking up gravel. He saw the drone, saw the doctor's urgent expression, saw Lily on the couch, pale and struggling to focus. The father in him, a raw, newborn thing, overrode the strategist. We take her to the Avalon Grand. Arthur, that's the most visible place on Earth right now, Miles argued. Exactly, Arthur said. We control it. We have a private medical suite on the executive floor for visiting dignitaries. We bring a medical team in through the service entrance. We lock the floor down, and we do it right under Victor's nose. He'll be watching the roads and hospitals. He won't expect us to go to the heart of it. It was a desperate, arrogant, brilliant gamble. They bundled Lily into a car, covering her with a blanket. Arthur sat beside her, his hand hovering awkwardly before resting on hers. Her fingers were cold. "Just hold on," he whispered. "Just hold on." The convoy sped back to the city, using a network of service tunnels beneath the Avalon Grand to enter unseen. Lily was rushed to the private suite, where a discreetly assembled medical team waited. Their diagnosis was swift and severe. Lily was experiencing a hypertensive crisis, a direct result of uncontrolled chronic hypertension exacerbated by extreme stress. She needed immediate, intensive care to prevent a stroke or organ damage. As the team worked, Arthur stood in the adjoining room, helpless. Miles entered, his face tight. "I found it," he said, holding a tablet. Victor Hale's fear. 12 years ago, long after his business failed, his wife filed a domestic violence report. She later retracted it. The police record is sealed, but the therapist's notes from her subsequent treatment aren't. She described systematic coercion, financial control, and threats to take their son if she spoke. She left the country with the boy. Victor has been searching for them ever since, using the same PI he's using now. Arthur looked from the tablet to the closed door where his daughter fought for stability. The symmetry was vicious. Victor, a man who lost his family through his own cruelty, was now trying to destroy Arthur's chance at one. "He's not just after my company," Arthur realized. "He's trying to prove that people like us, men who make hard choices, are incapable of anything else. He's making me the villain in his own story." "What do you want to do?" Miles asked. Arthur's eyes hardened. The pity was gone. "I want to give him a chance to be the hero of his. Get me a secure line. I'm calling him." The call connected. Victor's voice was smug, expecting surrender. "Arthur, I assume you've seen the morning edition." "I've seen it, Victor," Arthur said, his tone eerily conversational. "I also saw something else. I know about Claire. I know about Leo." The silence on the other end was absolute, a vacuum of shock. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Victor finally hissed, all pretense gone. "I have the therapist's notes, Victor, the ones you couldn't seal. I know the town in New Zealand where they live. Claire teaches piano. Leo is 15 and wants to be an engineer. If you touch them—" "I'm not you," Arthur cut in, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Here is my offer. You retract every false document. You issue a public statement admitting you fabricated the fraud narrative out of personal vengeance. You disappear. If you do this, I will give you Claire's current address and a one-way ticket." "And if I do," Victor spat. "Then I release everything I have to every media outlet on the planet, not as a billionaire, but as a father. And I will spend every last cent of my fortune not to ruin you, but to ensure Claire and Leo have the best legal team in the world to keep you away from them forever. You will never see your son again. You will be the monster in his story, not mine." Arthur hung up. He had just weaponized a family he had no right to touch. He felt sick, but he looked at the door behind which his own child was in crisis, and the sickness was replaced by a clear, cold certainty. He had entered Victor's moral universe, and he would fight by its rules. 30 minutes later, the National Chronicle published a stunning retraction, citing unverified sources. An hour after that, Victor Hale issued a brief, grim statement through his lawyer, admitting to a campaign of misinformation driven by a personal vendetta, before deleting all his social media accounts. The external threat had been neutralized, but the internal one was still critical. The doctor emerged from Lily's room, his face grave. "We've stabilized her for now, but the underlying condition is serious. She needs specialized, long-term cardiac care, and she needs peace. The stress of the last few days, it almost killed her." Arthur nodded, the victory over Victor tasting like ash. He had won the battle and proven he could be as ruthless as his enemies. But he was standing in a quiet hospital room, facing a truth no amount of strategy could fix. He had found his daughter only to learn she was fragile, and that his very existence in her life was a threat to her health. He walked to her bedside. She was sleeping, an IV in her arm, monitors beeping softly. He pulled a chair close and sat, for the first time in his adult life, with absolutely no plan. The public saga was over. The private one, the harder one, was just beginning, and it would require a different kind of strength entirely. For 6 days, Arthur Vance did not leave the private medical suite. The man who had once measured his worth in quarterly earnings now measured it in stable blood pressure readings and the quiet rhythm of a resting heartbeat. Lily slept, woke, and slept again in a fog of medication and exhaustion. The crisis had passed, but the damage was mapped. The doctors explained it to Arthur in careful, blunt terms. Lily had a genetic predisposition to severe hypertension, worsened by a lifetime of stress, poor nutrition, and the physical strain of constant work. The event in the lobby and its aftermath had been the trigger. Her health would now be a permanent management project, not a fix. She needed rest, consistent care, and above all, a life devoid of the kind of seismic shocks he had introduced. Arthur listened. He didn't argue or negotiate. He just nodded and said, "Make it happen, whatever she needs." When Lily was finally alert and clear-eyed, they faced each other in the quiet room. The world outside was still spinning with the aftermath of the confession and the retraction, but in here, there was only the hum of the air filter and the space between them. "The doctors say I have to slow down," Lily said, her voice still weak. "Which is funny, since my life has never allowed me to speed up." Arthur sat in the chair by the window. "I know I am the reason you're in this bed, not just the lobby, all of it. The stress, the not knowing, the struggle. I can't undo that, but I can try to build a different kind of future. One where you can decide what you want, not what you need to survive." "I don't want your empire," she said, her gaze steady. "I'm not offering it," he replied. "I'm stepping away from it. The board has accepted my resignation as CEO. I'll remain as a minority shareholder, but the day-to-day, that's done." This surprised her. The Avalon Group was his identity. Why? "Because it was built by the man who abandoned you," he said simply. "That foundation is rotten. I can't build a new life for you or with you on top of it." He then laid out a plan, not as a decree, but as a proposal. He had established an irrevocable trust in her name, managed by independent trustees, to cover all medical costs for life and provide a generous living stipend. He had paid off all her mother's remaining debts. He had also, he told her, made a sizable donation to the nursing school her mother had attended, funding a scholarship in Chloe Pearson's name. "These are not gifts," he said, anticipating her refusal. "They are reparations. They are a debt being paid. You can reject the money for yourself, Lily, but the scholarship for your mother, that's hers. That's her legacy. Let her have that." Lily looked away, tears welling. That was the offer she couldn't refuse. Her mother's struggle given meaning. She nodded, a small, silent acceptance. "There's one more thing," Arthur said, hesitating. "The Avalon Grand, the hotel where it happened. I don't want it to stand as a monument to that day. I want to rename it, but I won't do it without your permission." "What would you call it?" she asked, wary. "The Chloe," he said softly, "and I want to convert the entire executive floor into a dedicated cardiac wellness center for service industry workers who can't afford that kind of care. A place that treats the people who keep places like it running with the same priority as the guests. The first floor would be named for you, the Lily Vance Wing." Lily was silent for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick. "You can't buy redemption, Arthur." "I know," he said, his own eyes glistening. I'm trying to build something useful from the wreckage I caused. The redemption part, that's up to you, and it might never come. I have to be okay with that." This was the new Arthur Vance, not the tycoon, but the penitent, not certain, but trying. It was more disorienting to Lily than his anger had ever been. Her recovery was slow. Arthur was a constant, quiet presence. He didn't smother her. He just was there, reading in the corner while she napped, learning from the nutritionist what foods would help. He was awkward, often saying the wrong thing, but he was trying. And for the first time, Lily saw not a billionaire, but a profoundly sad, middle-aged man confronting the hollow center of his own life. One afternoon, she asked him a question that had been gnawing at her. "When you left, did you ever look back, even once?" Arthur put down his book. "Every day," he admitted, the confession seeming to cost him, but not in a good way. "I looked back with fear. I convinced myself I made the only smart choice. I used the memory of that choice as fuel to be harder, colder, so I'd never be that vulnerable again. Looking back with regret, That's a luxury I only allowed myself when I saw you in that lobby." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. As Lily grew stronger, they began taking short walks on the hotel's secured rooftop garden. They didn't talk much. They just existed in the same space, a father and daughter getting used to the strange, new gravity between them. The public, meanwhile, had undergone its own journey. The story had evolved from scandal to saga. Talk shows debated forgiveness. Editorial pieces were written about late-in-life accountability. Arthur's donation to the nursing school and the plans for the Chloe Hotel softened his image from villain to flawed, tragic figure. Lily was largely shielded from this by her choice and by Arthur's fierce protection. 2 months after the lobby incident, Lily was finally discharged into a new reality. She moved into a modest, airy apartment Arthur had bought, not a penthouse, but a safe, calm space with a view of trees, paid for from her own trust. She began seeing a therapist specializing in trauma and familial estrangement, and she enrolled part-time in online university courses for graphic design, a passion she'd abandoned years prior. Arthur, true to his word, stepped back from public life. He oversaw the transformation of the Chloe, involving Lily in the design choices for the wellness center. He learned to cook simple meals, something he'd never done, and would bring them to her apartment, eating together in sometimes comfortable, sometimes strained silence. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday, 4 months after everything changed. Lily was working on a design project, frustrated. Arthur was watching her from the kitchen table. He said, "Your mother had that same look when she was concentrating. She'd chew on the end of her pen." Lily froze. He never spoke of Chloe. "What else?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. And so he told her, small, precious things, how Chloe laughed at terrible jokes, how she wanted to be a pediatric nurse because she loved how honest children were, how she was terrible at gardening but insisted on keeping a basil plant on their windowsill. He spoke of the woman he'd loved, not the one he'd left. He gave Lily pieces of her mother she'd never had, fragments of a happier time. When he finished, Lily was crying, not tears of anger but of grief, for the mother she missed, and for the shared history she and this man had both lost. For the first time, she reached across the table and put her hand over his. It was a small gesture, but it was a bridge. The final surprise came not from Arthur, but from Lily. A year to the day after the viral video, she asked him to meet her at the site of the old flagship, now shrouded in construction scaffolding for its transformation into the Chloe. She led him past the workers into the soaring lobby. The marble floor where she'd spilled the cleaner was being replaced. She handed him a folded piece of paper. It was a design mock-up, a new logo for the Chloe's Wellness Center. It was elegant, simple, and beautiful. "I designed it," she said. "I graduate next semester. I want my firm, a firm I'm starting, to handle all the branding for the center. Not because I'm your daughter, because I'm good, and I want to help build this." Arthur looked from the design to his daughter's face, alight with a purpose he'd never seen before. He saw not a victim, not a secret, but an artist, a survivor, a force. In that moment, he understood that his amends weren't about giving her a new life. They were about removing the obstacles so she could build her own, and she was. His voice failed him. He just nodded, a proud, broken, hopeful smile on his face. The public humiliation had led to a private hell, which had, in turn, forged a fragile, real connection. The hotel tycoon who had everything learned he had nothing, and the daughter who had nothing discovered she had the power to rebuild them both. The documentary could end here, with the symbolic renovation of the lobby, a place of pain becoming a place of healing. But the real story was the quieter renovation happening in 2 wounded people, learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to be a family. The story of Arthur and Lily Vance is not a fairy tale. It doesn't end with a perfect hug and all wounds magically healed. It ends with a construction site, a new design, and 2 people in the same room, not looking at the past anymore, but at a blueprint. What happened in that lobby was a collision between 2 worlds, one of curated power, the other of invisible struggle. The viral video captured a moment of cruelty, but it was merely the trigger for a deeper quake, one that exposed the fault lines running through both their lives. Arthur's empire was built on the burial of his own humanity. Lily's survival was built on the acceptance of her own invisibility. The humiliation was the spark that forced them both to the surface. This story forces us to ask a difficult question. Can a person truly change, not in the broad, philosophical sense, but in the specific, grinding way that matters? Can a man who spent decades perfecting the art of being hard learn how to be soft? Can a woman who learned to armor herself against the world learn to trust the very source of her pain? The answer isn't found in grand gestures or press conferences. It's found in quiet hospital rooms, in learning to cook a meal, in handing over a design you're proud of. Change is not an event, it is a daily, fragile practice. Arthur Vance discovered that his greatest failure was not a business loss, but a human one. His redemption, if it ever comes, won't be written in headlines or bank balances. It will be measured in the quiet strength of his daughter's health, in the success of a wellness center that bears her mother's name. It will be judged by Lily and by Lily alone. And Lily, she discovered that her story did not have to be defined by abandonment. She reclaimed her narrative, not through vengeance, but through creation. She took the pain of that lobby and is helping to transform it into a place of healing for others. In doing so, she transformed herself from a victim of her past into the architect of her future. We live in a world quick to judge a single scene, a viral clip, a heated argument, a moment of failure. We freeze that frame and build a whole story around it. But this saga reminds us that every person is a walking history. The tycoon pointing a finger is also a terrified young man who ran away. The maid in tears is also a resilient artist, a devoted daughter, a survivor. The truth is never in the frame. It's in everything that happened before the camera started rolling, and in everything that happens after it stops. So the next time you see a story of public shame, of a powerful person falling, or an underdog rising, pause. Remember that you are likely seeing Act 2 of a much longer play. The real drama, the real transformation, happens off-screen, in the quiet choices that never trend. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever completely misjudged someone based on a single moment, only to learn a truth that changed everything? Or have you been that person, misunderstood, waiting for the full story to be seen? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story of hidden layers and hard-won understanding resonated with you, then subscribe. Because here, we don't just watch the headline, we delve into the human story beneath it. Thanks for listening.